Hi there, welcome to this build of a futuristic 1950s flying wing. This is the Ion, designed by Peter Fisher, and we're building it from a great set of plans that we got from Derek Scott's website. And if you have a look in the description below, there'll be a link to those plans. Now you can see we've got this Ion in a really advanced stage now. We've got all of the balsa construction done. We've more or less got, well, we have got the skeleton of the plane finished, and it's time to start thinking about getting this thing covered. Now we're going to be covering the open structures of the plane, so the wings, in a 38 micron laminating film. And that's what we're going to do in this video. And then in a subsequent video we're going to be covering the whole model in a Japanese Asuka tissue, a really strong wet strength tissue that we're going to be putting on with water or dampening it down, and then polyurethaning it with a water-based polyurethane that is diesel proof, and that's what this is powered by, a diesel engine. So that should be absolutely fine. Now we're going to be, as I said, using this laminating film, which we'll talk about when I start to put it on, but this is lovely stuff, and it's got a self-adhesive, so it's quite nice and easy to use. We're going to be using my Prolux digital heating iron, which I've used this lots on different models, and it's a great iron to use and very accurate and easily to control the temperature. And I've got some straight edges which we might use, but really important is a couple of scalpels and plenty of new blades, because you want to keep changing those blades to keep them lovely and fresh and sharp. So what we need to do is, before we start covering it, and I've done this already, is to sand the wings and make sure they are just lovely. No high spots, no bumps, we've got the contours right, because now is the time to do that, because once we start covering we can't change it, it's too late, and any high spots and bumps will show up really easily through the film and the tissue. So we've got to get it right now, and it's worth spending that extra bit of time to do it. I've also painted inside the cockpit black and the engine bay, just to add a little bit of, well, I think it just kind of sets it off really. So to get the laminating film on, we've got this front wheel which causes us a little bit of an issue, so we'll just put that over the side of the bench, and I've got towels on the bench just to, it protects the model from getting scratched, but it also stops it from sliding around, so it's kind of dual purpose. And I've got another towel here I can just put on the wingtip down here just to hold that still. I find towels and cloths in the workshop really useful for this kind of thing. So, oh, and once I've done the sanding, I should have said, all I do in preparation for the balsa to receive the laminating film is I just vac it. I've got my workshop vacuum with a brush, and that's all I do, just make sure I get all of the dust off. I do that on all my models and I don't have any problem with the covering. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a piece of this laminating film. This roll is 557 millimeters wide, so it's quite a wide roll, and I bought a new roll of this because the previous stuff I had wasn't wide enough to do the whole wing. I would have had to have joined it perhaps down this main spar, and I think covering this wing could be a little bit tricky on this curved edge. So I wanted to be able to attach it at the front, the back, and shrink it as a whole perhaps, rather than having to join it here and only being able to shrink this bit. If I can shrink the whole lot, it will help get that front edge right. So I thought it was worth the extra cost of buying this wider roll, which in the end cost me, I think it was £23 sterling from eBay, and that included the postage, and it's 150 meters long, and this is, I don't know whether I said, this is 38 micron thick, and it's fantastic stuff, and you know, I really enjoy using it. So I'll get a piece cut up and we'll get this get this top side covered first. And I'll just say I'm doing the top first because that will be the harder bit. I think the underside is more or less flat except for just a little bit here, and I think that will go on a lot easier. I mean, this top bit might go on fairly easy, but we'll see. I get the feeling it could be a little bit tricky. So much better to do that first, because if I do the underside and then stick this round and actually stick it onto the underside film around this edge, and then I have to take the top off, it may disturb the bottom. So I'll do the top first. Right, I'll get this cut up and we'll get it on. Right, I've cut a piece of the film now, and you can see I'm being quite generous. And we'll start to trim it down a little bit as we get it on, because some of this is going to get in our way. But I'll start off with it quite big, and you can see this is shiny on top, so this is the upper side. If we look at the underside, we can see that this is matte, and this will have the glue on it, so that's what we have down to stick onto the balsa. Now when we start sticking this down, I'm putting my iron on. It's on 107 at the moment, but it's hopefully going to cool down to about 100 degrees C. And I'm going to start with quite a cool temperature, and I'm going to stick along this edge, and I'm going to pull along here and stick this end, pulling this nice and tight, and we'll do the back edge, and then we'll finish up doing this front edge. I think it may change as we go. But when we're using the iron, my fingers are the iron, when we're using it, we don't want to use it like this, which will not only stick it down, but it will heat up this section and shrink it a little bit. And we don't want to shrink anything until we're ready to shrink it, because we'll lose shrinkage. And when we come to shrink it, we want as much shrinkage as we can get, if that makes sense. So we'll heat it up from this side, and then we won't have lost any of our kind of shrink power on this section. So we'll do that. And also, when we're working, we'll work out like this. If we work along, we end up with this kind of film, pushing it in front of you and ending up with a wrinkle and a ripple at one end. So it's much better to work out. And as you work out like this, you're pulling the film kind of away from the area that you want to cover, and so it's helping to tighten it. Obviously you don't want to go overboard because it will kind of work against us, but if we just work out like that, and if we do get a little bit of a wrinkle, we can put the heat on it and we can just pull that wrinkle out and reposition the film as such. But anyway, we're up to 100 degrees now, so I will start to get this on, and like I say, I think I'm probably going to start down this edge, and because of the nature of this, I am going to have to put the iron in like that, so I may get some of this hot, but I don't need to there. We'll see how it goes anyway. And one other tip, have a towel, put it on your bench. I think that's out of shot, and you can just plonk your iron on it. You don't need to worry about a stand or anything like that, and you can just pick it up and put it down without thinking. So let's just check we've got enough on here, and we'll just stick this down along this edge. We might need to just increase the heat a little bit. So you can see I'm just gradually going along this edge here, which is quite a tricky bit to get this done, and I'm just using my thumb to pull that nice and tight, and then I'm using the iron to make sure this is stuck down, and then I'm not taking it off until I'm sure that the film has cooled down and the glue is set. And I'm just going to relieve the tension on this here a little bit, because I think that is just pulling it back a little bit. Just there, it was just pulling that bit off. Right, so now I need to work along this edge, I think, which I'm just going to get rid of some of this excess, as it's just going to cause a problem and get in the way. Now, I think we'll do this, do the two edges, and then we'll try and bring it down in the middle. Make sure we've got these edges done. I think if we try and work from one end, it'll end up pulling this end off. Now, I am going to call in the help of some sticky tape, I think, and I am going to pull this with some tape to help me hold it in place, because as I'm going along doing this, it's just pulling off. So we'll see how this works. Well, trying to pull this edge round was proving quite tricky. So you'll see I've slit it. I put tape where the slits are to stop it splitting, because it does really easily. And I've pulled that and taped it on into position. It's not perfect, but at least now I can work on sticking that, and I'm not having bits that are pulling off as I'm pulling it to stick other bits on. We've got some wrinkles here, but I think they will shrink out. So we'll see how that goes. But I think we stand a much better chance now of getting this on. So I might just put a cloth under the front here just to lift that up, so I can get that leading edge a lot better. And we'll get that on there. Right, now having got this stuck down along the leading edge, I want to make sure it's really secure before I start shrinking it. So I'm actually just sticking it on the right round on this leading edge here. So I'm just going along and doing a little bit at a time, and then that will be a lot stronger, and then we can have a look at seeing if we can shrink this. Right, well, I've now got this on the top, and actually it's not gone on too bad. It was a little bit tense at times, but having the tape to pull all this round to hold it in place really made a big difference. And like I say, putting the tapes on where the cuts are to stop them ripping, because this film is strong if you pull it, but if you've got a cut, it will just tear really easily. This is quite taut, we've got a lot of bag here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bump the iron up now to about 180 degrees. I ended up putting this on with 120, but I'm going to bump it up to 180, and I'm going to start to shrink this front leading edge. And it might be that then I need to get the hot air gun and really shrink this and pull it all back. But we'll see how it goes. Right, well, you'll see that's gone on, and it's not too bad. There's a few little wrinkles here I'm not overly happy with, and I think I'm going to leave it though. I blew a little bit of a hole in here using the hot air gun. You can just see there. I'm not going to repair it. I think the tissue will cover that and it will look fine. I've done it in the past. It's not going to run or get bigger. And I think trying to patch it will just make it worse. So I think that's going to be okay. I mean, it could be better. It's not ideal. But I think what I'm going to do though is I'm going to do the top half of this wing. And I've had a bit of a change of thinking really, or a different thing I'm going to try. I'm going to stick it all on the back, stick it on this main spar here. And the thing about this covering film or laminating film is it does stretch. So what I might do is just try and heat it really hot and stretch it around this curve and see if that goes any better. I suspect it won't, but it's certainly worth trying because this really is a tricky compound curve to get done. So we'll have a look at that and see how that goes. I may end up ripping one of these off, depending. If that goes a lot better, I might redo this side. But trial and error, and we'll see how we get on. Right, well, I've got this on now, and essentially this has gone on pretty well. I used exactly the same technique as on that side. I didn't use a lot of heat in the end to try and stretch this. I think just using the forethought or foreknowledge of that wing helped me pull this around a lot better. So I'm quite pleased with how this has gone. Now, there are just a few little wrinkles, but I think we should be able to shrink this fairly well now with the iron. So I'm just going to, let me just put that up there, just prop that up, and that will probably look better on the camera with the light maybe. And now I'm just going to go around and try and shrink this. Now I'm on 160 degrees C with the iron. It will take over 200 degrees, as you saw earlier when I was trying to do the other side. But it does become a little bit tacky at that temperature. And the iron doesn't really slide. Right, well, I've now got this covered on the top, and this second side went so much easier, so much better, just from the lessons that I'd learned on the first one. And I used, to tension it, or to shrink it, I started using the iron, but then resorted to the heat gun. You really have to put the heat gun on, keep it moving so you're not heating one spot, and then as soon as you see it starting to contract and shrink, you need to move it away or you'll damage it. But I'm quite pleased with that. You can see the front edge is looking quite nice, and I think this side is probably okay. There's the hole that we put in it, which I'm not fussed about at all, and there's a couple of little wrinkles here, but I think once we get the tissue on, you will still see them, but I don't think they'll be an issue. I'll have a think about that. I may well cover this side again because there is some wrinkles at this far end, but we'll see. What I'm going to do now anyway is get the underside of this one done, which should be hopefully a lot easier process. So I'll get on and do that. Well, I've got this on now, and this has gone on pretty well, and you can see there's not that many wrinkles in it, a little bit around the front. But I'm going to bump the iron up to about 150 now. Don't want to do it too hot, and I will see if we can get this shrunk just with the iron. It's certainly a lot safer to try and do it that way. And also, I don't really want to be transferring heat, if I can help it, through the film to the top surface. I'd rather leave that be, because it's looking quite nice, or at least it's acceptable. So anyway, I'll get this shrunk if I can without the hot air gun. Well, I think I am going to put the hot air gun on just specifically here, and I may do the rest of it, but I just want to get this bit done. Right, well, I've now got that underside done, and that was relatively easy compared to the top. And we can see the top is, yeah, the top is still okay. It's not perfect. It's not like you would do on perhaps a more conventional type wing, but I'm pleased with it, and I'm looking forward to getting the tissue on that. So what I'm going to do now is I will do this other side, and we'll get this finished. To be honest, I'll be glad to get this finished now, because it's not been an easy covering. But anyway, I'm sure it will look great once it's got the tissue on it. Sometimes you have to know when to call it a day, and I think we're done here. It's gone on quite nice generally. There's a few little wrinkles that have appeared or not disappeared, but I think whenever you're doing a covering job, you kind of focus on the minutiae, and in a couple of days you won't even know they're there. So I think my advice, if you're doing covering and you're not happy with it, don't be too hard on yourself and put it to one side and have a look the next day. But I am really pleased with this, and it has been really challenging, shall we say, this tapered swept back wing. I mean, I kind of thought it was going to be, but I kind of hoped it wouldn't be. But anyway, I've filmed as much as I can, and you'll have seen that footage by now. I haven't seen it, I haven't looked at it, still on the camera, and I've tried to record as much as I can, but when you've got something challenging like this and you're trying to line it up for the camera, sometimes it's a little bit difficult. So if it's not that brilliant, or there's bits you'd have rather seen, I apologise for that. But like I say, you know, it's not the easiest job when you're trying to do a covering and get the camera kind of focused in. But anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I am really excited to start thinking about the tissue. I haven't come up with a design yet for the tissue. I have some ideas of colours, but I wanted to see how the film went on first, and whether I'd get away with a single sheet covering, which I clearly won't, or whether I'm going to need to do it in some kind of sections. So anyway, I hope you found this interesting and useful, and please come back and see how we get on in the next video in covering this lovely futuristic ion.